Billy here. Yada na divano. I'm in my apartment relaxing on the couch. Just going to put together a real short primer. As much information, just the basics for you to share with your friends who are ignorant because they get their information from the networks, television. Oh boy, where to start? But just a quickie. And I'm going to end this with I'm going to repeat the speech that I gave before the Russian Federation Civic Chamber last week about what I'm trying to do to fight this disinformation and try to stop this beast if we can, because this isn't benefiting anybody. Americans don't benefit from this at all. Your tax money is sitting in ash heaps all over Ukraine right now. And we all knew that was going to happen. You know, I said it was going to happen. There are people that are right there on the ground. Russell Bentley is one. He was saying it years ago exactly how this is going to go down, and it went down exactly like he said it would. You know, nobody was interested. Nobody wants to pay attention. But again, I'll tell you, your $2.5 billion recently was given to Ukraine to defend them against Russian aggression, which wasn't really happening. Ukraine was bombing and shelling the Donbass for the last 8 years, but you didn't hear about that. It's recorded. It's not even up for debate. The OSCE even, you can go to their site and look at statistics. They try to hide it. They don't want to tell you who's bombing who, but there's been thousands of violations of the Minsk agreements. And okay, let's start from the beginning. I'm going to go way back. I'm going to go through this real quick. So pay attention. Ukraine is not one monolithic culture or nation. It never has been. What's called Ukraine now, modern borders of Ukraine, it's never been. They're issuing propaganda. Matter of fact, I watched a video from some plucky little young, nice-looking Ukrainian girl telling you how Ukraine has always been an ancient culture. It's just sickening. This is funded by the West. They're teaching it in schools. They're teaching Ukrainian school children that Ukraine is a united nation that includes the Donbass and Crimea. It's not Russian, that they're Russians living in it for some reason and they have to get rid of them, that they're the original European civilization. And they go back, Jesus was a Ukrainian. They've actually said that sometimes. The Ukrainian language is the foundation of Europe. It's just ridiculous. If you do any study at all, real sources, you can see how cartoonish this is. Ukrainian is a dialect. It's not as different, or not much more different maybe than Brooklynese is from Mississippian in the U.S. The Germans created their alphabet for them because the Germans want to separate them from Russia and use them against them. The Catholic Church started the Ukrainian Unate Church, which is a fake Orthodox church which is under the control of the Pope. There was a schism back in like 1,000 years before that, where the Pope declared himself to be a hegemon, an infallible, and the other 6 churches had to do what he said, and they didn't get any say-so. That's why there was a split. The other 6 churches are Orthodox. They made a fake Orthodox church. It's under the control of the Pope, so isn't that ironic? They've been working on Ukraine, working on them, trying to divide them and inculcate hate. Kaiser Wilhelm, the first ruler of Germany, modern Germany, the nation of Germany, wrote articles about this. I think he wrote a book. I know he wrote articles. I've read them about how you can turn Ukraine against Russia and use it to defeat Russia. The West, the Catholics, the Protestants always wanted to defeat Russia because they see all that land and all those resources, and they don't like the Orthodox Church. Many of the Crusades were not against the Muslims. They were against the Orthodox and Byzantine, the Second Rome. Finally, with Western help, Muhammad X overthrew Constantinople, and it became a Muslim place. They turned the Hagia Sophia into a mosque. And so the Third Rome, the Orthodox Church, moved to Moscow as its head. And there are other heads, and they're equals. They have to be in agreement to do anything. But anyway, I'm not here to talk to you about the church. Like I said, it's not a united nation. The Donbass, a very big region in eastern Ukraine, was added to it. It was broken off Russia and given to the Soviet Socialist Republic of Ukraine, which had just been formed a few years previously. Before that, there was never a modern nation there. It was a borderland, like Germany was before 1867. The German state was incorporated through the tireless efforts of Otto von Bismarck and put under the rulership of the first Kaiser, Kaiser Wilhelm. I believe it was 1867, maybe it was 1863. I'm doing this from memory, okay? Look it up. There was no German state before that. It was an area where there were independent fiefdoms and kingdoms and city-states. They all finally got united and made a real nation. Ukraine, the place we call Ukraine now, has never done that until 1919 with German help. It's a project. And then in 1922, Lenin, you know Lenin? Yeah, the first pretty much head of the Soviet Union. They cobbled the Soviet Union together and they cobbled Ukraine together. They broke off a big chunk of Russia called the Donbass, full of Russian people that have been there for centuries. They took it, well, the Russians pushed the Ottomans out. The Ottoman Turks kept going further and further north, and it was nasty. They pushed them out, and they took that area back in the between 17th and 18th centuries, actually between the 16th and the 18th centuries. Anyway, Russia built the cities, and they did that in Crimea too, not just the Donbass, but Crimea, all the way around what is now southern Ukraine. Anyway, Russia built the infrastructure, built the cities, developed the mines and the steel works in the Donbass, and then Lenin broke it off and gave it to the Soviet Socialist Republic of Ukraine. And then in 1954, oh wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. In the 40s, Stalin took a big chunk of Poland, Hungary, and Romania and added it to the west of Ukraine. So you got a lot of Germans and Poles and Hungarians are stirred into the mix there. Oh, this is an ancient united nation, right? Never has been. It's a flotsam. It's like the Middle East. It was cobbled together like the Middle East was put together. The borders were drawn in the afternoon over tea by some English poofters. They made sure and put little tribes of people that don't get along inside borders so that they could control it and manipulate it. This is the way the Ottoman Empire worked. Anyway, where was I? Stalin added Lviv, the other areas around there in the Carpathian Mountains, from Hungary and Romania and Poland. There's always been anti-Russian sentiment in Western Ukraine because of this. Even before this, because of the workings of the Germans, the German Empire, the Nazis, before them the German Empire, before them the Catholic Church has always been trying to turn Ukraine against Russia and use it for a tool. Well, now the U.S. has taken up the banner. Congratulations. It's very expensive and it hasn't worked yet. Anyway, in 1954, Khrushchev gave the Crimea to the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic because these people thought that it would last forever and the new socialist man would appear and make ethnicities completely disappear. Not only that, he's still gerrymandering. I think what Lenin did was to gerrymander. He wanted to counter this anti-Russian sentiment that's always going to vote against whatever Russia does in the Central Committee. And Ukraine votes as a bloc, so he tried to balance it. That's my theory. I've never heard anybody else say that. Nobody else has an explanation as to why he did it. Anyway, then Stalin added more anti-Russians, and then Khrushchev added more pro-Russians by including Crimea. They didn't state the reasons why they were doing these things. I'm speculating, but they did it. The fact that they did it is absolutely indisputable, etched in stone, it's part of history, it's woven into the fabric of time, you can't do anything about it. That's the facts. It's not a united singular nation, no matter how much they have perky little Ukrainian brides that are getting paid to tell you this on their little plucky websites. We have to defend Ukrainian independence at all costs. You just sent $2.5 billion over there, and it's sitting in a pile of smoke and ashes right now. That's your money. You might want to be paying attention to some of this and quit listening to bullshit on the television. I know how the system works. I've been in the military-industrial complex. I've been in the factories, and I've been in the logistics. When you retire out of the Army as a general, or often as a very important full-board colonel or whatever, you're courted by industrial military defense contractors and factories. They lobby. They get you to lobby for them. They put you on think tanks. They give you a salary. They give you stock options. You think that doesn't affect your foreign policy? Most of these people are really dull-witted, greedy people. All they see is what they can grab. Oh, I could make my stock go up if we do this and we do that. Oh, that'll make my portfolio bigger. That's all they care about. Your foreign policy is being run by these people. They don't care about you. There's no checks and balances. This is a system that's been going for over 100 years. The most highly decorated Marine in history, his name was Smedley Butler. He wrote a book about it 100 years ago because he got sent down to South America, to crack skulls and shoot people because they wanted fair wages. They were being exploited by the American Fruit Company. Well, American corporation that's so important as the American Fruit Company should get talk to their Congress critter and get some U.S. Marines to go down there and back them up on their strike-breaking outfit. People were working for starvation wages, and there wasn't anything else to do there. Anybody tried to start a business, the fruit company would stamp it out. You think free market capitalism without any government protection for poor people and no controls is good? You think any sort of control over billionaires and corporations is capitalism? Capitalism is good. If you try to control it, it's socialism. You think controls on billionaires and corporations is socialism? You think billionaires and corporations love you and want what's good for you and the market will end up getting you prosperous? Only a protected market will do that. Only a market where people have certain rules that they have to go by. Anyway, back to Ukraine. What happened? That was the status quo in the Soviet Union. Didn't have any real big problems. It was all one big happy, right? Soviet Union broke up. Ukraine held on to Donbass and Crimea and everything else that they had. I think there was some influence to have them do that because certain people wanted that to happen. The people in Donbass are Russians. The people in Crimea were Russians. Immediately after the breakup of the Soviet Union in 1991, the Crimeans had a referendum because they didn't want to be part of Ukraine. They wanted to be part of Russia. It was ignored. They had another one in 1994. The city of Sevastopol was closed up until about, I think, 97. You couldn't even go there without permission because it's a Russian military city. And now I have this Ukrainian bride chick telling everybody that it's a united whole block of a country. It's united, all united. It doesn't have different states and federal districts. Well, Crimea was an autonomous region. They had autonomy by law. Sevastopol is an autonomous city in an autonomous region. Unfortunately, the Donbass never got that. But Ukrainians vote, right? Fair's fair. Democracy and all that rot. The people of Donbass, and you can think of Donbass as the Michigan of Ukraine. Actually, it's the Great Lakes area of Ukraine. It's Michigan, Ohio, northern Indiana, that kind of stuff. It's very industrial, steelworking, mines, metallists. It's a nice place. They always voted for conservative pro-Russians. The rest of Ukraine voted for what you could consider liberals, pro-Western. Oh, we're going to get Schweigen visas. We're going to join NATO. We're going to be advanced like France and England and Germany, and we're going to have all the wonderful things that go along with that. Well, you're enjoying them, aren't you? Anyway, let's call the Donbass the red states. They kept voting for people that wanted to keep doing business with Russia. That's where most of the money came from. Russia subsidized Ukraine too. When the Soviet Union broke off, Ukraine didn't have any debts to pay. Russia paid them for them, and they got half of the goodies. You can look it up. That's what Putin's talking about. It's documented. And the U.S. is saying, oh, where did he get that? He's gone crazy. Anyway, they got tired, they being the people that are still doing the project, that they inherited from the Catholic Church in the Imperial Germany and then Nazi Germany, and now the U.S. is doing it because it's anti-communist. But the communists aren't around anymore. It's just a party of old people, and they've changed their platform a lot. It's actually much less communist than most American university charters. Anyway, they want to continue with this, and so they didn't like, the big fly in the ointment was kind of like Trump getting elected. These guys kept electing pro-Russians, and they weren't not corrupt. They weren't pure as the wind-driven snow, and neither is Trump, really, when you look at it. But they kept electing people to keep things where they were, and there's lots of money, U.S. aid, all kinds of NGOs that went into Ukraine to train journalists, and they set this thing up over the years. I've lived here. I've been all over Ukraine. I spent weeks in Kiev. I spent many days, several times in Lviv, where the Nazis hang out. Yes, there are Nazis there. Well, actually, there were. I think they aren't doing too good right now. But anyway, I've seen it with my own eyes. And all their web pages have been you can look it up. There's a lot of other people who've seen this besides me, and they've written about it. They get banned from YouTube because our fact checkers, just stop. You believe them? The documentation is there. Anyway, they needed to do something in the West about this. They kept voting for pro-Russian people. I found a way to do it. Well, of course, there's a huge weakness. The last elected leader of Ukraine, that was elected by all of Ukraine, was, I think it was Yanukovych. Yeah, he was deposed in a coup. The U.S. set off a color revolution. They got people out there jumping up and down on Maidan, and they had a reason to, because Yanukovych was corrupt. He was stealing from everybody. Well, that's pretty normal in Ukraine. I've lived here a long time. Well, this isn't Ukraine now. I live in Crimea, but I was in Ukraine. And bribes was right across the table were de rigueur. It's what you did to get anything you needed. You couldn't do anything by being honest. You had to bribe the bastards to do their jobs. It's not like that in Crimea now. But anyway, when you have a bunch of people protesting, the color revolution tactics, and you can look these up, you can find information on this, and you can find it from the other side too. Gene Sharp engineered all this stuff. Then you bring in extremely violent people. You bring in thugs, soccer hooligans, mercenaries, whatever, and give them a little command structure to be at the right place at the right time. Then you start burning cops and shooting people. And then the U.S. starts saying to Yanukovych, you better not come down on these people. You better not crack down on them. It'll go bad for you if you do. This is a peaceful protest. I think Americans know about that stuff now, don't you? Well, you do, don't you? Black Lives Matter, for instance, that was a peaceful arson and job where they burned down a whole city and beat people up. Ain't nothing compared to what they did in Maidan. They had snipers shooting people randomly from the Ukrainian hotel. I've got a picture of my wife sitting in the window looking out on the Maidan Square, on the square where it happened, Independence Square. I've got a picture of it. I'll post it here one of these times. Actually, you could go to my share site, my photo share site, and look at it under Ukraine. It's allpurposepierce.smugmug.com. Anyway, we were pretty much in the same area those snipers shot from. Oh, you want a good primer on this? I want you to watch a movie. If you really want to understand what's going on, Oliver Stone did a movie a long time ago about this whole coup thing. Ukraine on Fire. I've seen it a couple of times. I had to remind myself what the name is. Ukraine on Fire. Look it up. It's a great movie. It's got more information than I've got, and it's a lot more entertaining. It's got pictures and stuff. It's great. Anyway, they pulled off this coup. The U.S. handpicked and installed a new government in Ukraine. Oligarchs like Kolomoisky that had their own private militias with their own Air Force in his case started getting command structure from the CIA about what to do. They seized power in Ukraine. Well, the Donbass says, we don't like this. We didn't elect these people. They overthrew the government. And immediately the blue states of Ukraine started saying, well, we're going to make it illegal to speak Russian and we're going to force you to be Ukrainians. That was tried before. When Lenin added the Donbass to Ukraine, this is another taboo subject, but if you do a little digging, you can find this is documented proof. It's not even arguable. Lenin added the Donbass to Ukraine. There was a forced Ukrainianization process where they did the same thing. They made the Russian language illegal. They made everybody go to Ukrainian culture classes. They tried to make Russians be Ukrainians. There's not that much difference, but, you know, people don't like that stuff. It didn't work, obviously. Anyway, they're going to do that again. And then they started sending their government forces into Donbass, and the Donbass people resisted successfully, very successfully. And the West couldn't believe it. How did they resist the army? They seized equipment from them. They made them stop, and they took their tanks and their guns away and kept them. And the U.S. said, well, Russia must have invisible people that are doing that. What a joke. It couldn't admit that the Ukrainian army could be defeated by a bunch of plumbers and miners and machinists, but they were. Then you had the anti-terrorist operation against the Donbass, against their own people. It was as if the blue states in Washington and Oregon and Chaz and all these other places were doing all the thinking in the U.S. and decided to have an anti-terrorist operation against the red states and the deplorables. This is exactly what you're seeing here. It's freaking amazing. It's like mirror images. And yet most Americans I talk to, well, them damn Russians took over Ukraine. We got to do something about it. You have no idea what you're looking at, who your allies are and who your enemies are. We need an international organization to stop this kind of stuff. And I'm freaking working on it. You want to help me? Anyway, back to the subject at hand. The anti-terrorist operation originally included aircraft. They were bombing buildings. The government was bombing buildings in the Donbass. Anyway, Ukrainian self-defense and, well, post-Russian space, there's not that much private gun ownership. Americans think because you have an AR-15 in your closet that you're going to hold the federal government off and keep them from doing anything. What you're forgetting about is you need command structure, you need intel, you need alternative communications, secure communications. You need, I'm sorry, but you need indirect fire and anti-aircraft capabilities, or you ain't gonna last 10 freaking minutes if they get the army to go after you. If they convince your soldiers that you're some sort of dirty, child molesting, diseased freaks that need to be exterminated, if they convince your boys to do that, you're toast. You're not going to do anything. In this area, it's a little different system. Veterans, active duty soldiers, neighborhood leaders, minor politicians, and oligarchs, they all cooperate with each other, and they have stashes of all the weapons you need. Donbass is able to hold off the Ukrainian government and actually kicked their butts a couple of times. They got their asses handed to them. The West couldn't believe it. There must be secret invisible soldiers for Russia and they're doing it. No, there might have been some advisors and there might have been a little pipeline of some equipment that they needed, but they generally used their own equipment. They even took tanks down off monuments. I love that. They had tanks sitting up on concrete monuments from World War II. And they greased them up and put diesel in them and fired them up and backed them off the monument and used them. In the U.S., they take the engines out and plug the guns with concrete, so you can't do that. I wonder why. Anyway, the Ukrainian forces, along with some British mercenaries who were there, documented, Polish mercenaries, probably some U.S. guys too, they're advising. You guys need to look at what you're doing. Anyway, they got their asses handed to them again and again. They kept going into cauldrons and getting caught in them and getting obliterated. And the last time it happened was the 9th cauldron that these people went into. There was a lot of them. They thought this was going to be the end all, and they got caught in another cauldron. That's when they, truce, and they signed the Minsk agreements. The Minsk agreements were supposed to be enforced by Western European powers. Enforced or, monitored anyway. Ukraine government agreed to the Minsk agreements. Then, every freaking day, they would shell cities in the Donbass, in Lugansk and Donetsk. They shelled kindergartens, they shelled hospitals, they shelled residential areas, they shelled people's houses, they shelled apartment buildings, they shelled shopping malls, they shelled mine entrances constantly. The OSCE, you can look at their website, there are thousands of violations against the Minsk agreements. Now, they don't want to tell you who did it to who, but you can find out, and some of this material I'm gonna link down here will show you how. The OSCE is, they're kind of fugazi, I think. They report things accurately, but they don't want to tell you what's going on. Who shelled who? Well, what do you think? Just use your common sense first off. This is a region that the major government went in for an anti-terrorist operation, and this region gets the hell bombed out of it. So what do you think? Who's shelling who? It was Ukraine violating it. Probably about 100% of the time. I'm not as prepared to show you how to cook this information out on the OSCE website, but I'll do that later. Or I'll point you to somebody that can. Anyway, this is all documented. This is all stuff you can dig up. But you sit there and watch Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow tell you what to think about it, and they bring in some waterhead general that has a lot of defense stock in his portfolio. We gotta get them Russians, say they're the ones that bombed them. They prepared you for this. They said Russia was going to create fake false flag incidences and say Ukraine did it. Well, Ukraine's been doing this for 8 years. It's already documented. There's nothing false about it. It's not like the U.S. did in Syria with the Syrians using barrel bombs. You remember that? Barrel bombs. It's all barrel bombs. The Syrian army is one of those well-equipped armies in the Middle East. Why would they make bombs out of propane cans? It's the U.S. people, or the people that CIA was funding that did that, and the white helmets. The white helmets would take kids away from people in ISIS-controlled areas, bash them in the head, and lay them out on the ground, and then go around when the camera's rolling and act like they were helping them. And they got $100 million from you, the taxpayer. When are you going to stop? When are you going to stand up against this stuff? Your government is murdering people and wasting your money, and they're going to screw the lid down on you. You think you got a place at the table? Are you getting free gas from Syria? Well, you know, the oil companies are, and they're putting it in their pocket, and you're paying through the nose. When are you going to stand up against this stuff? You need to organize. You need to listen. I'm sorry, I just keep getting off track, but there's a lot of stuff to cover here. I'm not through yet. Are we having fun? Everybody okay? Where was I? The anti-terrorist operation. 8 years of shelling. Documented. This is all with your tax money. Then they had the big surge where they sent them $2.5 billion. They kept saying Russia's going to invade them on, when was it? February 16th? Yeah, okay, that didn't happen. And they turned up the shelling. In the last days before the alleged invasion, well, around the 16th, that was a little before the 16th, the Ukrainian government moved in thousands of tons of heavy armor and equipment surrounding Donbass. You didn't hear about that. All you heard about was Russia countering it inside their borders and inside the Belarusian borders. You can't let another government move thousands of tons of military equipment and rocket launchers and missile launchers and artillery. You can't have them go around your border without countering it. You can't. Your government's not doing its job if they don't. Donbass, as I said, was a part of Russia that was given to the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, and the Russian government has not only a right, but an obligation to defend those people against genocide. Poroshenko, the coup government leader that the U.S. installed, I think it was the second one after Yats, Victoria Nuland said, Yats is our guy. He said that they were going to set up filtration camps to get rid of Russian rebels and terrorists. They declared these people terrorists because they've been voting wrong all this time. Then after the coup government happened, they defended themselves against it. Poroshenko openly talked about, he danced around a little bit, but he was talking genocide. And a lot of minor Ukrainian politicians have talked openly about genocide for years. and then they line up the equipment. What in the hell is Russia supposed to do? The U.S. military-industrial complex is positively giddy about this. They caused it to happen. They're going to say, look, we're going to make Russia invade Ukraine. Boy, we'll get rich then, won't we? You think this is a game? This is something I'm just pulling out of my ass. It's all documented. I'm not the only one saying this. There have been people a lot smarter and better connected than me that have been saying it for years, but you don't get to hear it. Anyway, they lined up to do the deed, and they started shelling the crap out of them. It just wasn't a little bit in one place. They're shelling the whole place. That's when Russia had a meeting. It wasn't... It wasn't Putin, the dictator, deciding what Russia should do. That's another trope that you hear all the time. They have a government very similar to the U.S. government. They have to have meetings and ministers and basically the equivalent of Congress people vote on things, and they discuss it and decide what to do. The Russian government, not Putin, the Russian government, of which Putin is a part, decided they were going to do it. And they did it. What's it been, 2 days? The Ukrainian army pretty much doesn't even exist anymore. All those $2.5 billion worth of weapons, ka-ching! The contractors got all that freaking money, and now it's just a smoking pile of ash. And they're planning on making more. And they're going to use this for an excuse to do it, and you're going to pay for it. What do you want to be? You going to stand up to this stuff, or are you going to lick boots the rest of your life? You don't have a place at the table. You're not making any money off this. One of the many aspects to this, Biden and his family, they're making tons of money. They're looting Ukraine. I could do a whole seminar just on what they've done. But we're not talking about that right now. This is supposed to be a real brief primer. Anyway, where am I? Another thing is the Nord Stream gas pipeline. The U.S. wants that foobarred because they don't want Western Europe, getting cheap gas from Russia. Well, the Russians will control them then, won't they? The Russians have always supplied gas to Western Europe, just in small amounts. They've never controlled anything. They never jack people up with sanctions or say, we want you to do this or we're shutting your gas off. They've never done that. Who's done that? The U.S. has done it in every regard and every aspect. You know what sanctions are? Who's sanctioning who? The U.S. is the sanction queen. They're the ones that try to control everybody else's internal affairs with their economy. Why can't Germans and French and Spanish people buy inexpensive gas from Russia? Well, by God, American companies will sell them gas. We'll load it up on ships and send it over there. It'll probably be like $9 a cubic foot. I'm exaggerating. It'll be pretty expensive, though. Well, that's good for America. Again, Mr. and Mrs. America, your prices are going to skyrocket when they do that. You don't have a place at the table. And why are you shilling for it? Why are you having these idiot generals get on Fox News and we got to stop Nord Stream because then Russia can control Europe? They're all making money off of it. They're screwing you. You need to stand up, grow a pair, organize, do something. Anyway, that's just my opinion, my 2 cents. I've got facts to back it up. Besides, I freaking live here. I've seen this with my own eyes, and I've been a part of the military-industrial complex, a very minor part, just like a little insignificant bug that gets to crawl around under the cracks. But you know what? You get to hear and see a lot of things that most people don't. Anyway, I'm going to end this now. This has been long. Let me find this. I'm going to tell you what I'm all about. This is, we live in interesting times. I gave a speech in front of the Russian Civic Chamber. Does that make me a foreign agent? I don't know. I don't care. Maybe I'm a seditionist. I don't care. I'm true to American values. I have remained loyal to what America is supposed to be. That means that I am a seditionist and a traitor to the present government because they are against what America originally stood for. They're against what any reasonably moral people would be standing for. Anyway, I gotta open this thing. I'm trying not to have a bunch of dead airspace. Oh, there it is. I already had it open. I had it prepared and then I hit the wrong button and screwed it up. Anyway, this is what I said before a little circle, yeah, it's a pretty big circle of international journalists and filmmakers, different organizations that are involved in what's going on in the Donbass, and some Russian officials. It's not the best speech in the world, but I want you to know where my head's at and what I'm trying to do. Where's my cursor? I hate having technical problems. Okay, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the invitation, speaker. It is an honor. It was an honor. I want to tell you about the forgotten middle-class workers in America and how they can be best courted to form a reliable partner in the struggle for a multipolar world. You don't want a new world order, I'm pretty sure. It'll be a nightmare. Your life will be horrifying. Oh, excuse me, I'm getting off course. But that's why I said that. I said that the middle-class workers in America, regular folks like me and you, need to be courted. We need to be informed. We need to be have these lies destroyed, so we can be a partner in a struggle for a multipolar world. Multipolar world, that's where everybody has their own sphere of influence. Traditional cultures are respected. They're not hammered with corporate money to make them conform into something that is more profitable to the billionaires. Anyway, I'm explaining my speech as I go, so it's not verbatim. I'll be 60 years old this week. Actually, I'm 60 yesterday. I look pretty good for 60, right? I have been an automation specialist for over 40 years, a lot more than 40 years. I have done contract projects in many factories, large and small, all over the country. I do not have a university degree. Self-educated. In the USA, we still had the remains of that naturally evolved, locally managed production industries that this sector had been diminishing in the last few generations, and now it's almost completely gone. In this antique system, experience and results are regarded as superior to a university degree. Well, the more corporate management you got, the less that makes a difference. The more you're being squeezed out. In America, there are millions of working people who are managed against their own values and interests. In most places, especially large corporations, it's no longer just about safety and production, but the corporate policy is increasingly dictating how you're allowed to interact with others, what you're allowed to say, what you're allowed to believe, and even think. Highly skilled craftsmen are being replaced with quotas of women and minorities that have no leverage for negotiation. They're interchangeable and paid smaller wages. Rather than apprentice people and train people, be highly skilled that can run the show, no. We put electronic fences up to keep idiots from hurting themselves, and untrained people and people that are unqualified, and put them in there because they don't have any bargaining chips. They don't have anything to negotiate with. You take the salary or you leave. A lot of the technology I've installed in factories has been towards that effect. It's ideologically driven. I see patterns. I've noticed this a long time ago. I'm sorry. Here I go again. What you're allowed to say, believe, and even think. Highly skilled craftsmen are... Okay, I got that. Interchangeable, smaller. Much of the automation technology I've installed is designed to accommodate this. Often the results are more waste, damaged equipment, and inefficiency. I got stories. The feedback to upper management is highly filtered, and the few remaining people like me are brought in to put out fires and try to make things work, despite the forced implementation of overweening ideological-driven corporate fantasies. And these come from the financial sector as well. Especially the financial sector. It's where they get their money. These ideological fantasies can be described as a new form of colonialism. It's based on deception. Competition is eliminated. Resources are taken from people without paying. Even labor is kept in a state where there's no choice but to work for less than survival wages with no obligations on the part of employers. They're going there. That's what this is all being set up to do. The plan is eventually to be implemented worldwide. That's the Great Reset. Ukraine is a prototype. I work as a logistics contractor in Afghanistan for 4 years and 2 years in Iraq, and I notice how this system works. There are millions of American workers who are being disenfranchised, put under pressure to comply with the very ideologies that are eliminating them in their best interest. The true left is non-existent in America. It has been replaced by a circus of identity politics focused exclusively on race and gender, and intersectional differences between otherkins and whatever. This process began in earnest in the 80s and now has reached such an absurd intensity that it is actually beginning to collapse on its own internal contradictions. This collapse is quite welcome, but it will not be pretty, and it hasn't happened yet. There is no official structure that represents a true right in America either. The entire edifice has been captured by a corporate stooge version of Zionist Trotskyism that spends all our energy clutching our pearls and screeching about the hypocrisy of the left and blaming China, Russia, and Muslims and communists and Iran for what their own corporate backers are doing. Even the paleoconservatives have become nothing more than corporate shills. There is nothing new under the sun, and I am reminded of where Trotsky got his $20 million. I gotta tell you, the left-right paradigm, it's a joke. Don't buy into it. It's not left and right. It's a class struggle. You don't have to be a communist to say that. It's the truth. It's a class struggle. The elites against us. What is needed is clear. I think it's clear. Being anti-left or anti-right or anti-elite or anti-globalist, it's not enough. You need a plan. The best plan for the future is to describe a social architecture that will support local control and supervision of all media, police, economic, and political power. It should be local. It originally was in the U.S. That's why we're federalized. That's been taken away. All power not delegated to the federal government is to go to the states, and all power not delegated to the states is to remain with the people. People don't have any power anymore, and the states don't have very much. So I said that. These multiple local political architectures can be standardized to work together seamlessly in a regional system. The beginnings of this system can be organized only after people have something to fight for. You have to be inspired. You got a beautiful, shining city on a hill that you can aspire to. Not just anti-democrat, not just anti-communist, not just anti-Trumpist or whatever your flavor of the day is. You have to have something to go for, and that's something to be had. The technology we have is being used against us. It can be used against them. You shouldn't have any political power unless you're absolutely open, being filmed, being monitored, being drug tested. How come that doesn't go for them? It just goes for you. There I go again. You need political power that is accountable locally, that protects the dignity of organic, self-directed communities. The shining city upon a multipolar hill. You have shining cities in the south and in the north, in Canada, in New Jersey even, and in Russia, in India, in China. Your own culture, your own cultures, protected from Klaus Schwab and his global reset. They want to standardize humans. You gotta fight this. I mean, that's the New World Order. That's the plan. Please don't help them. If they fool you into thinking that you're preserving America when you're going and killing people in a foreign land that have nothing to do with you, that are fighting this, you're fighting your own allies and you're fighting for your own enemies. It pays well. No, they don't take care of you, but no, they'll pay you short term so you can pay your mortgage and it goes right back to them. I wrote a book called Unified Separatism years ago. It's not very popular. But I try to describe how an architecture could be built where there's accountable government. You have media, video archives and the internet where you can focus this on people with political power to keep an eye on them and keep them clean. It can be done. It's not being done anywhere. No, that camera's focused on you. They're watching you, every move you make. And they're replacing the judicial system with community standards, which they never really tell you exactly what they are. They just they're going to start taking your bank account away when you violate them, just like they take your internet account away, or your Facebook page or whatever when you stepped on the third rail, although they don't tell you exactly what it is. They get to define it. Is that cool? You like that? Is that jibe with the Constitution? Oh, that's private. It's their sandbox. You have to play by their rules. How do they get a monopoly on social platform? They wouldn't even let them have a monopoly on a lot of things unless there was very close government oversight, like your phone company back when they started them back in the 20s, Ma Bell. She had to play by the rules. She couldn't disenfranchise people. She didn't like their politics. Ma Bell was closely regulated. Then they unregulated it. Now you have thousands of little companies that do your media, but they're all owned by the same people and they're all on the same page, and there's a monopoly and they're oppressing people and nobody's going to do anything. Oh, it's private. It's a private business. Yeah. What are you, a socialist? How's that working out for you? Might want to rethink some of your political labels and your right-left paradigm, because you're not going to survive if you stay in that crap, if you let them waste your time listening to people like Charlie Kirk and Ben Shapiro. They're misdirecting you. It's not a left-right thing. Anyway, I'm going to call this quits. I know this is kind of discombobulated. I'm trying to put something more academic sounding together, something organized. It's going to have to go into depth in little bits and pieces. This is just an overall primer. And I'll redo this and make it a little better. I'm more of a writer, not much of a speaker, but I've tried writing and not that many people read anymore. So I'm doing videos. People have told me they're entertaining and I've got some followers. Maybe I'm doing so good. What do you think? Please leave your comments. I think they make a lot of them disappear, the platform does, but that's okay. I'll play right in their sandbox. I'm building something else though. Anyway, this is Uncle Bildy signing out. I hope you enjoyed it.